I was so proud of you when you got your Oscar nomination. I was so stoked. It's your first Oscar nomination. How does it feel?
Oh my gosh. I'm still not quite I'm still not quite in belief of it. It's the Oscar is one, it's the pinnacle of the prize at the end of a long journey if you can get there. And it's something that has a special meaning just in terms of the work that I do is, that it has the support of my peers. And yeah, it's a really incredible feeling.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Process. I'm Jessica Chastain, and I'm here today with my longtime collaborator, makeup department head, Linda Dowds, to discuss the work we did together in Searchlight's pictures, The Eyes of Tammy Faye. Hey, Linda.
Hey, Jessica.
We've worked together. We met in 2011, and then we worked together like basically nonstop. I mean, there's a couple of projects that didn't line up in terms of schedule, but for the most part, like everything I've done has been you.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful.
Great. Yeah, me too. Me too.
So you want to why don't we start by you telling, because actually this is something I don't know, like how did you get involved in makeup? What was, what was the first thing that drew you to it, your interest in it?
I think that I kind of fell into it in early days, and it intrigued me enough that I took a course, and that course introduced me to a woman who, and the course was a cheap and cheerful one, and that course introduced me to a woman who ran the opera company. So I started taking some classes with her and worked at the opera company for 2 seasons, which was a great training ground. And then while I was doing that, I met some people who worked in television, and I took some classes with them and then started working on television projects and working with them on some things. And then my true love, which I, sort of where I really wanted to go, was film. And it was the same process where I, met some people that were working within the union, and I got on the permit list and started working with them and I think for me, I got the most incredible training working with people that were already working and having that on the job process and being in those immediate moments where you sort of, you live and learn.
Yeah, amazing. And then, so how long have you been working in makeup?
Well, I started in 1987. So it's been a long time. And when I actually think about that, I really have a hard time imagining how long it's been, because it doesn't feel like that at all. Right. And I think that's a testament to the fact that I still, I love the work. And so it doesn't feel labored. It feels, it feels creative and joyful still, which is, I think I'm very fortunate to be able to say that.
Mm-hmm. And are there any memories from any projects that, stick out to you?
I think I think I've been so fortunate in that I began in Toronto, and there were opportunities that came to me where they were smaller projects, smaller budgets. Actors weren't necessarily able to bring some of their own team members. And because I'd worked with maybe some really lovely and gifted producers and directors, production managers, they would get me in for interviews. So I think that was one of the great things for me, was I was able to work with some amazing actors early on, and build on that, which was particularly great. And
which actors, what memories from projects?
I did a wonderful project with Diane Lane, Hollywoodland, which I loved. Woody Harrelson did a small project in Toronto called Defendor, and I was very excited to obviously work with him, but he's also vegan, as you may know, and I had to beat him up a lot. He also wore he played a sort of a superhero in it, and so I had to paint a mask on him every day, like a Zorro mask. And when I looked around, there weren't any of those products, and I started having to figure out, how do I do this? And I looked at the textures of those kinds of things that were non-vegan. And I started trying to think of how I could make them. And I got in my kitchen like 3 nights in a row before he was coming in for a camera test and made up all these colors and did all that. And we had a collaboration after that, just based on the fact that I was able to pull those things together. So it's moments like that. I remember Grey Gardens was a wonderful opportunity. And so I think some of those moments are really special. And I think the really joyful thing is that some of the actors I've met along the way, I've had the opportunity to work with them again. You included, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think that's really nice. We were able to establish a bit of a relationship, and where the opportunity arose, I was able to move on to other things with them. And so those are good memories.
That's great. And you can see it, because you're very inventive. So when you're talking about working with Woody Harrelson and trying to find the products, or say, well, how can I do what needs to be accomplished here, but make it make sense for the actor. It's great. You're very, very inventive, and I found that a lot on Tammy Faye. So much so, like, even the process, which I know is not a normal process. Usually it's like you go into the prosthetics and the makeup happens. There were times I remember going in and we'd start with you, and you would start painting my face, and then the latex would, the prosthetics would come on, and then I go back to you, and it was so much back and forth. Or even the idea of, remember we were talking about the eyebrows and how we were doing that, and you were making masks to make to stencil it in every time. So it was for her tattooed makeup. How do we make things look tattooed rather than like on the surface?
Right.
Can you break down like the elements of, that we see in the film for Jim and Tammy on the prosthetic and the beauty side?
Yeah, I think, a lot of research on all sides goes into something like this. And I think the key thing that I believe we all wanted to do is to achieve an authenticity to the work. And so it was super important. I think everybody had those preconceived images of Tammy Faye, for example, that they'd seen on late night television shows. And I never ever saw images of Tammy Faye looking all broken down like that. So, there were key things that became really important. And it was the authentic look of both those characters. So for Jim, it was, getting the right sideburns. And we of course went across almost 4 decades in terms of timing. So colors changed, facial hair changes, aging comes into play. So there were quite a number of elements that we needed to bring a truth to, and to honestly reflect those characters, because they were real life. So there's documentation. We saw them on Nightline, we saw them on their own shows. And so you had to be truthful to it, and you had to make it as realistic as possible. And as you know, with prosthetics and beauty makeup, which in this case was really key, the two materials don't necessarily work well together. So you have to find a way. And when you mentioned we'd shift chairs and things like that, we found a way to, we found if the eyeshadows, which were all frosty for some of that work, would fall onto the prosthetics, that's a difficult thing to clean up on a prosthetic. So we found it better to bring you into my chair first, and then prosthetics would take over, and then we'd go back and finish, and the wig would go on, then the nails would go on after costume. So I think what's great about something like this is that we all had to adjust a little. We all had to find the best way to work as a team. And I don't think you can do a project like this without having that kind of collaboration. And that came from you and Andrew, of course, and then the prosthetics team, Justin Raleigh's Fractured Effects team, and of course, Stephanie Ingram, who does the brilliant wigs. So I think that was really key. All of us really finding those ways to mix materials, to get the looks down, and to work at it together at the same time, so that we did the best way, and to get also you guys out of the chair more quickly.
True. Well, you kind of like brought up like Justin and Stephanie, who are both
Mhm.
brilliant at what they do. And Stephanie, Ingram, is the head of hair department. You worked with her on my films for many, many years, and you guys have a long collaboration. And I've seen from project to project, you know, even things like yesterday we were on set and I had wig lace and we were trying to match the color of the skin, because the characters I play have different, you know, shades of their of tan or whatnot, with the lace, and try to make the lace invisible and all this kind of stuff that you guys work together. Can you speak in terms, I know you spoke about the frosty eyeshadow, but what are some other elements of the collaboration you had with Justin and Stephanie on this project?
The materials, you know, when I want to, for example, if I wanted to put a blush on you, I can't just put any blush on. The materials have to be different. So I worked with Justin to say, here's some colors. These are what I kind of want to use. This is what this reflects this period. This also reflects Tammy's look for this period. And so they created some things, or had a process to go through, where those materials worked for both of us. And same with Stephanie, you know, there is a dance between what we do, and not everybody can work in tandem, which we tend to do. And so we're working at the same time. And what becomes great is that there's an intuitiveness about how we, without saying a word, we switch sides, or, you know, we might, you know, she might see something and she'll say, oh, Linda, did you notice this? Or I might say, hey, do you need a little of this for there? And I think that's also comes from doing it together for so long. That becomes much more organic, and we just go there naturally. And in this case, it was imperative we had some of that same organic collaboration with prosthetics, because the beauty element was so important for Tammy Faye, and we had to find a way to, you know, you and I both love dewy skin and things that look real, and prosthetics can sometimes not always look like that. So we wanted to find the materials that made it look like it's your skin. The highlights, the contours, they all had to look as real as we could possibly get.
And it's many years too. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, playing her, it wasn't a simple thing of like, oh, just gain weight or just do this.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
when we first meet Tammy Faye, when she's in college, she was like a little slip of a girl. She was 4 feet 11 inches tall. She weighed like 92 pounds or something. And to start from that version of Tammy, when she's just, you know, starting to embrace makeup and you know, push against the Pentecostal upbringing that she had grown up with, to the end where she's actually now tattooed her face, and she's had quite this journey. It really is an arc in makeup and in acting, but I feel like they both go hand in hand for me, because one feeds the other, creating that arc. So what would you, I mean, is there anything you want to add about that range, I guess, and prepping her for the journey she goes on?
Yeah, I think the research really helped, because Tammy told us a lot about herself, and she talked about her upbringing. She talked about her, you know, you can see she visually put herself together. She loved makeup. She took a lot of care in putting herself together. She did the matchy, you know, costume, shoes, lips, nails, hair. They all kind of came together. She was very well put together, and it became very obvious even in early days. She had a specific look for her younger years, and again, she was wearing makeup when most people weren't. Then she progressed into, you know, her work on the Christian Broadcast Network and PTL, and she went through a phase there where everything was really, I'd say it was really quite youthful in terms of the tones. They were softer and prettier, and again, she loved pink. She said, you don't have to be dowdy, or you don't have to be dowdy to be a Christian. She questioned, she said, who said you can't put mascara on false lashes? So I just always had her in mind when I was working. And then when we got to the later stage, the boys had created all the aging elements. So they gave us that, that palette or that shape of the face to work with. And then that gave us something to build on as well. And then her tones got deeper. The wig colors got deeper, the tattoo, lip liner, eyeliner, brows, that all came into play. And the colors were more intense and deeper. So I think as we moved through, there was a lot of storytelling through that. And I think my job, and I think we, you know, most of us feel that way, is that the work is meant to help move that process through. So we are there to help facilitate that character development from where we can, and give additional tools to someone like yourself to have that visual sort of like, oh, okay, great. This is how she looks in this period, and then move forward into the work with some confidence in knowing that we've helped give some tools to do that.
Oh, that one. How much time do we have?
10 minutes, Tammy.
Oh, goodness. Hey, Mom, did you see the show? Wasn't that fun?
I'm not sure what's so Christian about decorating a cupcake.
You're so funny.
Have you seen this? From The Observer. Picture of you and Jim on the front. PTL's baker diverts ministry funds for new building project. What's that about?
Well, you can't believe everything that you read in the newspapers, Mom. How's Fred doing? Is he settling in okay?
Smoke and fire isn't just the province of hell, girl.
You know, when I saw that clipping with my face on it, I thought for a second that you were proud of me.
I'm hearing there are articles like this in the paper every day.
The secular press hates us because we're winning millions of souls for Jesus.
Oh, Tammy Faye, you follow blindly. In the end, all you are is blind.
When we met all those years ago on Mama and worked for the very first time, you know, what made you think that we could make a good team and continue without ever knowing that the journey would be so long and so wonderful? But were there any specific things?
Yeah, I'm someone who gives so much. You know, when I'm acting, I'm very much obsessive about it. And so I tend to work with like-minded people that are also that way, because it's difficult sometimes when we spend so much time away from our families and our friends, and we're on a set, and you know, it's such a gift what we get to do. That's one thing. It's like so many times people in our industry forget how lucky we are to do this. This is something that usually we've wanted to do since we were kids, you know, and we get to be involved in this industry and we get to do this. And so for me, it's always been really important, and it's been very, very important to give everything to it. And you were like that. In addition, like, to your work being phenomenal, you had a joy about you. You had a obsessive quality about you, which I share. We would, you know, we could look at videos, the trailers, the images you put up. We talk, you know, there's so much research and everything. And that's also like-minded with me. I love doing a lot of research before I show up. And I know with Mama, I wasn't playing a real person, but it was very difficult. It was a completely different physical look for me. And, you know, I think Andy modeled her off of Alice Glass. So I had like the short black hair and a lot of makeup and the tattoo down my arm. And you just were so wonderful in terms of the work and helping me with the transformation, but also when you're away from your friends and family so long, you want to be with people who actually have joy in what they do. And you have a lot of that. And since then you've become, you know, family to me. But I think it just felt immediate, like, oh, we are like-minded in this work.
I loved that project. It was a good project for sure. What kind of preparation went into your portrayal of Tammy? And knowing you're portraying a real person, what are some of the differences, or priorities that you make in terms of that?
Well, I mean, because I've been talking about this project since I basically got the rights in 2012. I just had been studying her from the very beginning. So everything I could find, every video I could find of her on YouTube, which there's a lot out there. I watched all of the Surreal Life. I watched anytime she was on reality television. I watched any of the PTL that I could find. I read all of her books. So she wrote 4 books, I believe, and she recorded over 20 albums. I worked with a vocal coach to try to help me sing like her, and a dialect coach, Liz Himmelstein, who helped me sound like her, because her voice, not only is it different in terms of the accent, the Minnesota accent did not come natural to me, but the pitch of her voice is much higher than mine. And the documentary filmmakers that I got the rights to our film from were very generous, because they shared with me all their unused footage. So I had hundreds of hours of her just doing like random things, like driving the car and just talking. And every time she said something that I was like, that's a jewel, I would write it down. I would just, so I had this Bible of like the things she'd say, the quotes would say. And it got to the point when we were filming that I could go through the script and be like, oh, she wouldn't say this, or she'd put in a, like right here, or I was able, I was very scared to play her, because she's so different than the characters I have been playing recently. She's not like type A. She's not, she's more goofy, more camp, more like soft and malleable, I guess. And the characters I've been playing are quite driven and ambitious and ready to take over any project, save the world, solve the equation of gravity, all of these things, which is not Tammy Faye. And yet when we were on set, there was a moment, because of those 7 years of like intense work, where I was kicked in. I like was in the pocket, and I felt like, oh, I've never met her, but I feel like I know her, and she's so close with me, improvising in her, and I could actually lead the crew in a prayer, and I did, which is a foreign thing. So I got to the point, I think, of that immersion. It was total immersion for me, and that's what made it feel like we were sharing the same skin.
Yeah, no, that was very, we saw it every day, just not only on set, but in the trailer, just listening to you were, you've spoken in interviews to the discomfort that comes with, lots of prosthetics, and it has a different feel because you've got a whole other layer on, and the work you do, it's obviously you don't want to lose the elements of expression. So maybe you can speak a little to that and the work using prosthetics versus,
Yeah. Well, it was a completely foreign thing to me. I did the Eris on Broadway, and I wore a fake nose that they taught me how to put on. So I did the whole latex. I did the whole thing, sealing it every day. And I know how difficult it is. And that was one little element. So I had great respect, and I was in awe of what was happening on my face every day. I think in the beginning, it was a lot of panic of, how do you act when you can't feel air on your skin? How do you act through it? She was such an open, porous human being, so sensitive. And yet now I have a barrier between me and others. And I was able to, and this is, I just think, how I am with life. This is how I try to approach life. If an obstacle shows up, I try to look at it as like something positive, because truly every obstacle is something positive. And I realized that it was freeing up it was putting my attention on other senses, like my eyes or my voice, or like certain gestures that I may not have thought about had I not had the prosthetics. And the prosthetics and the makeup are so fine that even like there's shots of me like where my eyes are twitching, or my cheek like has like a little spasm. That's not
Yeah.
That's not like special effects. That's real. And so it's so malleable. It can still have my emotions come through, but maybe the feeling that of like, oh no, I can't feel air had freed me in that way. And I think it's really, really important. A lot of people, there has been a conversation of like, oh, with makeup and with prosthetics, does it sometimes hinder a performance? And for me, we tried it both ways. Like we tested prosthetics and no prosthetics. The way she looked in public, the way she presented herself in the world, and the change she went through physically in those many years from college to the 90s was ginormous. And her appearance was so important to her. She talked about it. We knew the exact brand of mascara she used. We knew everything. Her appearance was so, so important that for me to not allow the time and the artistry to honor her desire to look a certain way, I felt would have been a scapegoat of the whole project. So I was really happy, even though like the longest day was 7.5 hours in the makeup trailer, you guys got it down a lot shorter. But I was honoring her. We were all honoring her by honoring her love of self-expression. And so that was a huge part of the performance for me, is what you guys did.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, Linda, I was so happy to talk to you about all the beautiful work that you did, and how the makeup really, really helped create this character. And I love you, and here's to many, many more collaborations together, and congratulations on your recognition. It's wonderful that we both have this to celebrate together.
I know, I love it. It's amazing. It's great. Thank you so much.